What kind of book can become one of the most challenged books in America, while also being praised as life-changing by countless readers? What kind of story creates outrage in school board meetings, sparks national debates, and becomes a symbol in the fight over free expression? This isn't a story about a villain. It isn't a story about a hero. It's a story about identity. And for some people, that makes it one of the most controversial books of the modern era. Today, we're exploring Gender Queer, a graphic memoir that became one of the most talked about and challenged books of the 21st century. Why did so many people want it removed from libraries? Why do so many readers defend it? And what does the controversy reveal about society itself? The answer is far more complicated than most headlines suggest. Few books have generated as much debate in recent years as Gender Queer. Supporters call it an honest and deeply personal memoir. Critics argue that certain illustrations and topics make it inappropriate for younger readers. The book became a lightning rod in discussions about identity, education, censorship, parental rights, and freedom of expression. But beneath all the political arguments lies a simple reality. At its core, this is one person's attempt to understand themselves. And that journey is what transformed a personal memoir into a national controversy. The creator of Gender Queer is Maia Kobabe. Like many people, Maya spent years trying to understand feelings that seemed difficult to explain. Growing up, there was often a sense that something didn't quite fit. The expectations society placed on gender felt confusing. Questions about identity appeared long before clear answers did. Rather than writing a fictional story, Maya chose something far more vulnerable. They decided to tell their own story. That decision required courage. Memoirs expose parts of life many people would rather keep private. Fears, confusion, embarrassment, mistakes, questions. The result became a deeply personal account of self-discovery. What began as one person's story eventually became a book read by millions. But that success would also bring controversy. A lot of controversy. The world of Gender Queer isn't a fantasy kingdom. It isn't a dystopian future. It isn't a grand adventure. The setting is everyday life. Schools, friendships, family relationships, personal thoughts, private struggles. Yet that ordinary setting is exactly what gives the story its power. Because identity questions often happen in silence. They happen inside classrooms, inside bedrooms, inside conversations that never occur aloud. The book explores what it feels like when the labels society provides don't seem to fit. And for many readers, that feeling is instantly recognizable. The memoir follows a gradual process rather than a dramatic event. There is no single moment where everything suddenly makes sense. Instead, understanding develops piece by piece. Questions lead to more questions. Confusion leads to exploration. Exploration leads to deeper understanding. Throughout the story, the author examines feelings about gender, social expectations, and personal identity. The journey isn't presented as easy. It includes uncertainty, awkward moments, fear of misunderstanding, fear of rejection, and perhaps the most universal fear of all, the fear of not knowing who you truly are. That emotional struggle becomes the heart of the memoir. Many people assume the book only speaks to those exploring gender identity, but the broader appeal comes from something larger, the search for self-understanding. Almost everyone has experienced moments where they felt different. Almost everyone has wondered where they belong. Almost everyone has struggled between who they are and who others expect them to be. The specific details may differ. The emotional experience does not. That's why many readers describe the memoir as deeply relatable. Not because their lives are identical, but because uncertainty is universal. The central conflict isn't between characters. It isn't a battle against an enemy. It's a battle between identity and expectation. Society often provides simple categories, yet human experiences are rarely simple. The memoir explores what happens when personal reality doesn't align neatly with cultural assumptions. That tension drives much of the emotional weight of the story. And it raises difficult questions. Questions many people never stop asking. Who am I? How much should I change to fit in? What happens if I don't? The most important character is the author themselves. Strengths, honesty, self-reflection, courage, curiosity. a willingness to examine uncomfortable truths, weaknesses, self-doubt, fear, confusion, uncertainty, internal struggle. The struggle is not about defeating someone else. It's about understanding oneself. That battle can be harder than any external conflict. Transformation. Over time, uncertainty gradually gives way to greater self-awareness. Not perfect certainty, not complete answers, but progress. And sometimes progress is enough. Identity. The most obvious theme. The memoir asks what happens when traditional categories don't fully describe someone's experience. Belonging. Human beings want connection. We want acceptance. We want understanding. The fear of losing those things appears throughout the story. Communication. Many struggles in life begin when people lack the language to describe what they feel. The memoir highlights the importance of finding words for experiences that once seemed impossible to explain. Self-acceptance. Perhaps the most important theme of all. Understanding yourself is difficult. Accepting yourself can be even harder. Now we reach the question everyone asks. Why was this book challenged and banned in so many places? Critics argue that certain illustrations and discussions of sexuality are inappropriate for some age groups. Many parents and community members expressed concerns about whether the material belonged in school libraries. Supporters respond that the memoir addresses real experiences and provides representation for readers who may feel isolated or misunderstood. They argue that removing books because they discuss difficult topics can limit access to important perspectives. This disagreement became part of a much larger cultural debate. Questions about education, questions about parental involvement, questions about free speech, questions about identity. The book became more than a memoir. It became a symbol. And symbols often attract conflict. The debate wasn't only about one book. It reflected larger disagreements already present in society. People brought their values, their fears, their experiences, their political beliefs, their hopes, their concerns. The result was a conversation that extended far beyond literature. Whether someone supports or opposes the book, understanding the controversy requires recognizing that different groups often view the same work through completely different lenses. Many people focus on the controversy, but the deeper questions may be more interesting. What happens when language fails to describe personal experience? How much of identity comes from society? How much comes from within? Can people truly understand experiences they have never lived? The memoir doesn't offer easy answers. Instead, it encourages readers to think. And sometimes asking the right question matters more than finding a simple answer. Courage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes courage means telling the truth about yourself, even when you're afraid. Understanding takes time. Personal growth rarely happens overnight. Patience matters. Empathy matters. You don't have to share someone's experience to listen to it. Identity is complex. Human beings are often more complicated than labels. Conversation is better than assumption. Many conflicts begin when people stop listening. Maybe that's why this story continues to resonate. Not because everyone agrees with it, not because everyone sees it the same way, but because it deals with questions that never fully disappear. Questions about identity. Questions about belonging. Questions about acceptance. Many people read this book. Far fewer stop to consider what it feels like to spend years searching for words that explain who you are. Perhaps the real struggle wasn't against society. Perhaps it was against uncertainty itself. Is the controversy justified? Reasonable people disagree. Some believe the content makes it unsuitable for certain audiences. Others believe its educational and personal value outweighs those concerns. Why do readers continue to defend it? Because many see their own experiences reflected in its pages. Why has it remained relevant? Because questions about identity and belonging remain relevant. And why should someone read it today? Not necessarily to agree, not necessarily to disagree, but to understand, to explore a perspective different from their own, to engage with an important cultural conversation, and perhaps to think a little more deeply about what it means to be human. Books can be challenged. Books can be removed from shelves. Books can become targets in cultural battles. But powerful stories have a strange habit of surviving. Because the strongest stories aren't made of paper and ink. They're made of questions. And as long as people continue asking questions about identity, belonging, and understanding, this book will continue to matter. Whether you see it as controversial, important, flawed, courageous, or all of those things at once. The conversation isn't ending anytime soon, and maybe that's exactly why the book continues to be discussed today. If you enjoy discovering books that were banned, challenged, controversial, or misunderstood, subscribe to the channel. Here, we uncover the stories others tried to silence.